Okay, hello, welcome back to another game of chess. Today we're playing e4 as per usual. My opponent decides to respond with e5. We're going to play knight f3, of course, putting a little pressure on that pawn. Hopefully, seeing knight c6 so we can play the beautiful Scotch opening. d4, if they take, we take back, of course. This is the battleground on which many of my finest games have been fought. Why? Because we open up both bishops beautifully immediately. We get just a lovely claim to the center. Opponent deliberates for a suspiciously long amount of time over which move they are going to play. Queen f6 here isn't the main move. Bishop c5 is the classical variation. However, in that variation, after bishop c5, bishop e3, there's then queen f6, mounting further pressure on the knight. So I'd imagine bishop c5 here would make a lot of sense. Are we going to see it? If we do, we're going to play my favorite opening in all of chess. Oh, the Blumenfeld attack. Now, c3 here, stabilizing the center, is the main move in the classical variation. I believe 95% of the time this move's played. But knight to b5 here is the Blumenfeld attack, an exceedingly venomous sideline in which I am brutally prepared. They take, of course, that is basically the only move they can play. The bishop's hanging, the fork's hanging, they need to trade off the bishop. Now, if I go for the fork here, after king takes, if I take the rook, of course I get mated. So we have to recapture the bishop. We do get these slightly ugly pawns here, and they have, generally speaking, three popular moves in the database. King d8 also features, but I think it's just a little less popular because it looks a little uncomfortable. And the three main moves, which I will now color code with this and no, not blue, we're going to go red here as the best, a pretty decent and just an abject blunder taking on b2. Which will they choose with this queen? There are other moves here, but either you've got to threaten something by getting at my king, or threaten something by going for my rook here. Actually, threaten something should not be in quotation marks. They are threatening to take the rook, but instead they choose the mediocre option. Now, why do I say this is mediocre? Well, the queen returns to her home square. She defends c7, problem solved. I've got some structural damage. Okay, they can kick the knight. I probably don't have much pressure here that's actually convincing. I don't have a dark squared bishop to bring into the fray. However, this allows an absolute flurry of threats from white. There was a famous quote, I believe, from Garry Kasparov, where he says, if you make 10 threats in a row, your opponent will blunder. I'm paraphrasing, of course. The number might not even be 10. I think it is, though. Anyway, the sentiment remains the same. We're going to start with queen g4. Immediately threatening to take on g7. How are they going to solve this? Most likely by playing g6. It's clearly very intuitive. King f8 is actually the best move, but I believe I've faced that once. We do see g6. Now, queen f4. Another threat. Taking on c7. How are you going to solve this? I mean, you're going to play d6? Probably. I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense. You want to move your light squared bishop. There we go. Bishop to c4 now. We're going to threaten a checkmate. How are you going to defend this? I mean, knight e5. You're going to attack the bishop. You're going to defend the checkmate. Your knight is, outposted there. Absolutely. Kingside castles, you take my bishop, it's checkmate. I'm now threatening to take on f7, and after knight takes, take with checkmate. How are you going to defend this? Well, probably with the queen. You want to defend f7, but okay, queen d7 doesn't make so much sense because the light square bishop's blocked in, so queen e7, right? If I get like 4 moves in a row predicted, this would be awesome. By the way, I'll let you in on a little secret. Queen d7 is actually the most appropriate move. Queen e7 is a mistake for reasons that I will elaborate on when we see it, inevitably, because you got to defend this. You don't want to go here and just hang a knight. Although I guess actually it's more interesting because there's takes here. But then there's maybe takes here in the end. It gets very freaky. We can delve into that line, but I don't think queen f6 quite works. And so in terms of adding an extra layer of defense to the f7 square, out of these two moves, I mean, the most intuitive seems to be queen e7 so that you can still move this. Or you just ignore all of that and play f5. Wow. Right. Hold the flipping phone. This cannot make any sense. I mean, I said you make a certain amount of threats, your opponent's going to blunder. I would imagine this is close to a blunder. Maybe it's playable, actually. So far, I've been on absolute autopilot with these moves. This is just all prep, but f5 is completely new. Now, at the very, very least, I could drop back with the bishop and just have a great position. Play knight c3, rook d1, etc. I'm thinking we could take here, though, because then after bishop takes, I play e4, and then if you take this, I take here. Huh? I mean, we've got to soften this up, right? Now, if I take here and you take my bishop, I take here, I'm threatening checkmate, I'm also threatening g7, trapping your rook. I think it has to be this. I think it just has to be this. We also redeemed the double pawns, which is, far from my main concern right now. I really think we got to be taking on here. They recapture with the pawn. That is interesting, but vastly weakens this diagonal. And again, you're nowhere near castling queenside. And this knight is still lurking. The queen's still tied to c7, doing her job there. I could keep the initiative by trading this first, and then making my move here. so that I'm not, you know, losing the bishop, but this bishop's too strong. There's no way. Bishop e2 to play bishop h5 does seem to make a whole lot of sense, actually. Maybe we don't need to be on this beautiful diagonal. Maybe we could swing round and get on this beautiful diagonal. Bishop e2, maybe knight f6, and we can't go for the check straight away. That's less obvious. It might make sense to take this here. This is very, very interesting. I should put probably quite a lot of thought now into this next move. But it does make sense that they took with the pawn, because, I mean, e4 now is not a resource whatsoever. Takes, queen h6 does make some sense. Going after this. Same with like queen e7 though. Play queen h5. If you block, then I can trade and take here. Or better yet, take that first. I just think trading this is such a dubious decision. I don't know, man. I don't know. Takes. Queen h6. If you just kick my knight. No, because I can take here. Tempo on the rook and tempo on c7. Honestly, really and truly, I think taking this is a good idea. I think the fact that we now don't have to worry about our bishop hanging, everything in me was saying that that's stupid, because, I mean, look at the weak light squares, but maintaining the initiative and maintaining the tempo and maintaining the attack, I think is even more valuable. Queen h6. We're threatening queen h5, we're threatening queen h7. Queen h7 will also come with this threat, so they go queen e7 to defend this, as I said. However, you're still looking at this as a problem. Now, I go here. You could block with the knight, I guess, or you could just move the king. I go here. Oh, no, hold on. Remember, guys, I mentioned earlier that queen e7 instead of f5 was a mistake. That's because knight c3, knight e5 then happens very fast, and there's problems on d6 with the softness of d6. If we just now remember this in this position, knight c3, let's use all our pieces. You play c6 and this hangs. How else are you going to stop me from coming in here? Okay, maybe you play bishop here, but then oh, wait, do I? Hold on. There's a beautiful tactic here. There has to be. I can take here first, you play queen takes, and then take here and take here. Come on. It has to be, right? There's also the fancy idea to take here, but then after here, we take back, takes, and it's just a fancy way to win a pawn, I think. Here, we play knight c7, and oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful indeed. The queen takes. We can then take the bishop, and not only are we winning the pawn there, not only are we softening up the king there, but we're attacking both this and the rook. Now, you can play king f8, but then maybe the knight comes in here, and oh no, king f8, just rook f5. This is a disgusting game of chess. Oh my lord. Surely this is a candidate for some kind of immortal game. Just gorgeous prep into a flipping tasty attack. Rook f5. What, I don't know, what are you going to do? Play king g7? I guess knight f7 is plausible, but it doesn't look very convincing. But then we just go checkmate. It has to be rook f5. It just has to be. Here, we have checkmate. I mean, sorry. Here we have checkmate. So knight f7, I mean, we have this, we have this. I'm thinking both make a whole lot of sense. I think probably just starting with rook f1, forcing rook g7 makes some sense as well. Although I do have queen h6 as a check, which I maybe should consider. Now, let's start with rook f1. We've got this open f-file. This is absolutely obscene. Absolutely obscene. So, yeah, rook g7, just only move there. Now, it would be interesting to play this. It would be really interesting, actually. But, yeah, you can then unpin with the king, right? We've got to be coming in. We've got to be coming in with the knight. Okay, just pure principles, bring in all the pieces. Maybe there's something more tactical and convincing, but knight d5, I mean, you couldn't really ask for better pieces here. I'm bringing that knight into the fray with tempo. You can't go here, you can't go here, you can't go here. So how do you defend this knight? Oh my lord. Legitimately, this is one of the best games of chess I've ever played. I really hope this is extremely accurate, because I know for a fact it is up till move like 11 or so. I know it's basically 100% accurate up until here. Takes has to have been decent. And then this trade, queen h6, knight c3. Okay, maximum there were a few dodgy moves in there. Maximum there were a couple non-perfect moves, but everything else has to have been absolutely perfect. And now, I mean, you drop back with the queen because it's hanging, but we're going to be able to take this. And should you take, it's going to be checkmate. I'd imagine we see our opponent resign here. We don't, okay. Instead, we... a double checkmate to finish that game in 22 moves. My first thought was just to take here and then, you know, bring the rook in or go check here or queen f6 or... No, a double checkmate is absolutely appalling. We also, of course, had moves like this, but why consider any ulterior move when you have... I mean, that is nasty. This queen is just overworked. You can't do both jobs. You can't stop both checks. What a game. Okay, so here we are in the analysis with a 94% accurate game, 3 inaccuracies, which I will wear, of course, as a badge of honor because one of them is the Blumenfeld Scotch. But 94% accuracy, we did actually give away some... the takes queen h6 idea wasn't actually ideal. However, practically speaking, I mean, the graph shows you a very convincing story. Let's go through that game. That was so nasty. Okay, e4, e5. We'll open the master's database and just have a little look here. Knight f3, knight c6, d4, ed4, knight d4, bishop c4. f5, not bishop c5, sorry, queen f6 first. This was a classical variation, but only by transposition here. Then you can see, look, from here we've got 256. Actually, can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. From here we've got 256. Nice, good number. 2 to the 8, I think, games in the Masters database, but once the bishop c5 is played, we've got then 2800, rather similar to my performance rating for that game. And as I said, 95% here play c3 in the Masters database, but 5% play the brutal knight to b5. Inaccuracy, it's the best move on the board. That deserves 3 exclamation marks and a purple sticker, I don't know. But of course, bishop takes, pawn takes, and then, yeah, as I mentioned, queen h4, queen d8, and king d8. If you look at the actual, Lee chess database, then you see queen takes b2 26% of the time, which is actually a terrible move because the queen gets trapped after knight c3 and rook b1. But instead of going for this crucial queen h4, g3 takes, and then picking up the rook, but blundering your rook, not blundering, sorry, but you know, it's an exchange of rooks, a very fancy exchange of rooks. They go back to d8. Now this is played 18 times in the Masters database. However, queen g4, g6, we step across queen f4, d6, bishop c4, knight e5, castles played 8 times, and as I mentioned, I mean, this is just encyclopedic knowledge of this opening. Queen e7 and queen e7 are the 2 moves played. Queen e7, not so good because of this very speedy knight here, and if you go c6, there's a freaky sack here. Queen takes, and knight takes here, and you win it back. King moves, we take here and win the rook as well. Super freaky stuff, and instead, they play f5. Now, I thought this had to be a blunder, it was a mistake. We took best move, then I took here. Now, knight c3 straight away is actually optimal. I guess this isn't hanging, but oh, when we recapture, we threaten this, and that is intensely problematic because c6, we have rook ad1, cb5, knight b5. That's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Understandably, I wasn't too comfortable with that. I didn't, you know, I kind of wanted to keep the tempo going, so we took and went queen h6. Now, both inaccuracies. Definitely still white has really nice winning chances here. Our opponent, instead of, oh no, queen e7 was actually really good. Knight c3 and then bishop here was in fact the blunder. So correctly deduced in the game that there were a couple of non-optimal moves between the theory and then this gorgeous little tactic of knight takes c7. Instead, they should have played rook g6, which would have made a lot of sense. I could have played queen h5. There's still pressure. I'm still threatening maybe knight to d5 here, but the problem is, or the reason the rook g6 is so good is because probably now you can play c6 and there's no d6 hanging. Yeah, okay, so c6, the knight has to go back, whereas before, if you don't find rook g6, and this was admittedly an oversight from me, we get to take this with check, and it's held. Opening up the d file, you know, this would not have been good. So, yeah, slight oversight about rook g6, but then finding this is gorgeous. Taking here, of course, if they hadn't have taken, we were just going to win a piece. And then taking on f5, if they go king to g7, we go checkmate here, that nice little arrowhead. So instead, they drop the knight back, bring the rook over, bring the knight in. This is just nasty. Take here, and then checkmate with the double checkmate to wrap up a gorgeous attack. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I most certainly enjoyed playing it. I reckon I'll have titled this video something akin to My Immortal Game, or something, you know, vaguely recognizing that this was maybe the greatest game of chess I've ever seen in my life. I don't want to see any comments calling me a prep merchant. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe if you liked this and you're new. I mean, there's plenty more where that came from. I can't promise it'll all be of the exact same caliber as this. This was, you know, if this is the first video of mine you've watched, this was a particularly nasty game. However, most of the games I play on this channel are equally aggressive. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.